Record. Oh my God, thank you. Because I just like, I literally go somewhere else and I don't even see. Shame. So in Spanish, shame is vergüenza. I want to know, and I'm going to type it here. I want to know if you know any other language, obviously, other than Spanish and English. Could you please type in the other language that you know, the equivalent of the word, if there is, or if there is like a concept that denotes this notion of shame in the same way that it's very similar to what is talked about here. Okay, let's see. Onte. Krista, how you pronounce that? What language is that?
It's French.
Okay, how do you pronounce?
Oh, I'm actually not a very good French speaker, but I do know this word.
Okay, and Sepideh, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's in Farsi, it's charm.
Charm. Oh,
Charm.
okay. Charm.
Yeah.
And Alexandra, Bergonia, what language is that?
Italian.
Oh, Bergonia.
Bergonia. Oh, I hate it. I don't know. I hate that word.
Even the sound of it, right? See, for me,
yeah.
You see, like the impact of a word that we know, because for me, if I say Bergonia, like it sounds like a flower, like I had but for you, it's like automatically, ooh, right? So the same thing for me when I hear vergüenza, I like my liver just starts causing electricity. What else? In Arabic, Samia, could you pronounce that, please? Ar?
Yes, sure. It's ar.
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 Yes.
Okay, what do you feel when I say the ar? Do you feel the same thing that Alexandra feels or not really?
Yes.
Huh.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. And Gloria says Pinagua?
Pinagua.
¿Qué es? ¿Qué lenguaje es? ¿Qué idioma?
Náhuatl.
Náhuatl. I should know that. Mala profesora, mala profesora. Okay. Jessie sounds stronger than vergüenza. Jessie, what sounds stronger than vergüenza? Which language to you? Which translated word sounds stronger? Okay, Jessie, bueno. Luego, Chang, how do you pronounce that in Chinese?
It's called 羞耻.
羞耻.
Yeah, 羞耻.
羞耻.
Yes.
I pronounce it really bad, don't I, Chang?
I can understand.
Okay, so when you hear someone else that has the correct pronunciation, what do you feel? Do you feel this also like or like what is it to you? Like what do you feel with that word?
I feel this word with strong emotion. Yeah. Not people usually don't say it in public, I guess, because that's considered quite personal, because it's shame, right? So if I heard it, I will feel, wow, you pull out to me, you believe in me. I feel like that.
It's personal. That's an idea. Like that's like literally like you can write a paper about that. Oh my God. Because it has a lot to the word is personal. It's like it has to do with the carceral state, with like prison states, like the way that the state and the church are like the two entities that like literally have control this word in colonialism. And I want to bring this now, if you can follow my train of thoughts. I know it's kind of like difficult sometimes because I'm like, but I want to bring this to what Maria was trying to, or what she questioned, the question that she presented to Manal in relationship, once again, to the word feminism, and why from her indigenous knowledge, the word feminism doesn't exist, right? So then if an indigenous culture, or in indigenous, I don't want to say culture, the cosmovision and in the way of living, like it's a way of living, right? In that way of living, if the concept of shame does not operate, then there is absolutely no reason for behavior to be punished in the same way that colonialism punishes people's behavior, particularly women. And I think that that's kind of like Maria was saying, if correct me if I'm wrong, Maria, so you can maybe like bring us back to your point, because I think it's like we are like when we talk about intersectional work, and this is why sometimes when I have students who I mentor or they give me their work to read, and I read in the very first paragraph that they're going to do an intersectional work. And I was like, okay, let's be careful when we use this word if we're not really taking into consideration all of these different positionalities, because otherwise it's just going to be a very square and inbox framework where you only consider like the primary categories, which are gender, class, and race. Those were the three main sort of like categories or tabs, if you will, that were kind of like originally, they were originally conceived to be thought about intersectional work. And then little by little, people started adding like different categories. And now to do intersectional work, you're like, okay, well, without doing an interdisciplinary approach, meaning if we don't take into consideration disability rights, ethnic, the notion of ethnic as like a huge category, or somebody yesterday in the class mentioned about the tribal, the tribes like in China, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then we are left with a semi-complete analysis, and it's complete, and that is very dangerous, because that is when misrepresentation takes place. And that's the reason why when speaking a language, and I'm sure that most of you probably have heard about this book. It's a book by Linda Smith, and it's about research and her beef with research as like the capital R, like research, like full on institutional research. And in the book, and I'll send it to you in like the follow-up email, but in her book, she says, she's an indigenous woman, and she says that for her as an indigenous woman, the word research is one of the dirtiest words in English, because of everything, because of all the damage that it has done to indigenous people, right? So if I'm kind of like taking that logic, and if I kind of like use that decolonizing lens to do methodology or to do research, then I'm kind of like also following I also need to take into consideration like what Maria was saying, in the sense that like, well, what about the word feminism? Because it did not come from me, so why would anyone come to Bolivia to do a feminist reading of my indigenous experience? Does that make sense? Like in terms of I'm talking specifically about the word language. And one of the things that I found as I was rereading the chapter today, I thought about the political, when we actually name something, we baptize it, right? Like we in the name of the queen, in the name of the queen from Spain, the first island that Christopher Columbus and his crew, the first island that he claimed when he named it was an island called El Salvador. It's an island in the Atlantic Ocean. It was like literally the first thing that they encounter after, like, because October, he landed in October, which is like a hurricane season, right? So after like being in the ocean for like a long time, finally they found tierra and they're like, oh, and then they looked up and they're like, oh, finally, the savior, El Salvador, right? Like the savior, El Salvador, came to rescue us. So this idea of like the name has to do everything with colonialism. And what Samira, Jasmine, and Ola do to that entire 528 years of colonialism in the Western Hemisphere, well, 200 and some years in Egypt. But what they did is that they literally invented new words, reshifted the entire language approach to understanding women's rights, to their own autonomy in Egypt. And that to me is like, this woman deserved the Nobel Prize of Peace. Like when you think about what they have done, is like, I situate myself, I like, you know, because I'm like very space cadet, and I'm literally, as soon as I opened up the book and I started reading it, I felt their screams. I felt like I was simultaneously listening to their screams. And that is the way to start a narrative of whatever form that narrative takes shape. You start screaming. You're like, God damn it, I'm here and you're just gonna have to listen to me. Like they like literally are grabbing the horns and they're like, no. Completely upside down. In the political, on page, let me see, what page was it? In page one, I think it was 134. I don't know what pages you guys, because I think that most of you got the PDF section, but there is an entire paragraph where I was counting the verbs that they were using when they were actually giving their testimony. And I was trying to pay attention to what Manel's choice of verbs were, you know, because I was like, okay, if Linda Smith, because when Linda Smith does her criticism, she bluntly names white people as the primary harmers of extracting pain from indigenous communities in Australia, or in what is now known today as New Zealand. And I was trying to think to myself, okay, in the case of Manal, it took her 10 years, and she's from there. Like, you could almost say that she's one of them in the sense of cultural affinities, historical affinities, linguistic affinities, no, not religious affinities, but all of these affinities that she could easily say, oh my God. And she literally took care of everything, even, and you could still hear in her tone of voice that she's still like, oh, like I'm still, like she's still having problems with it. And that's good. She should be feeling that, like every person that does research work. And I think that that is kind of like the behavior that needs to be modeled more in academia, where people need to think critically and emotionally and ethically and all of those things that dictate that what you are doing is completely wrong. Like it's completely wrong. It's completely wrong to go into a community and extract their information because of a research paper that no one is probably gonna read. And in the book, Manal says that what these testimonies do, the political intention, and that's two words that I want us to ground ourselves in, like what is our political intention in the work that we do? We need to have clearly established what is the political intent. Because in popular education, or whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to, if you want to call it pedagogies of resistance, pedagogies of liberation, pedagogies of like, you know, like all of these celebratory things to take us away, to dismantle patriarchy and colonialism, etc. What is the political meaning of you and me exposing this? Like, what do we get out of it besides, you know, the same old intellectual orgasms? And naming them. I share on yes, no, I'll tell you in the message. Okay, I think somebody had their hand up. Cepide?
Oh yeah. I was thinking about these words. Obviously, in many languages, there are more than one words that connotate with the meaning of shame. Well, where I come from, Iran has been colonized for more than 1,300 years. And I think, that colonial impact is manifested in the number of these words that attach to the meaning of shame, and that is attached to females. Shame is for women. In my culture, shame does not have to do with male or, let's say, men in the society. Women are shamed. And there are many, many words that have that meaning in Farsi. That's what I just wanted to ask. Anybody else thinks like this when you go back and think about your own language or any other language other than English that you think of? Do you see this kind of pattern? And this is also, strongly manifested in totalitarian regimes, like the one that we have in Iran. Yeah, that's what I just wanted to highlight. Thank you.
Other people that would like to be in dialogue with Cepide with the comment that she just made, because I think that you're onto something. Kira.
Thanks for bringing that up. It kind of made me think, and just to position myself, my mother is white and my dad is Algonquin. So I have worked a lot within like Indigenous communities, and I'm actually trying to learn some of my language because my dad won't teach me, and that's some of his own trauma. But I've found that in my own learning that the words in like that part of my community are much more like cyclical in nature. They hold so much more meaning. And it's not just like one word means something. Everything in like in Indigenous culture, everything is interconnected, and like in so many ways. And when we were talking about the position women hold before, it made me think about how women are the water protectors in Indigenous culture. And so the like position they hold is actually the most valued. And like I made a note because I was just thinking about it, but that they're really actually central to the community, and that like that community piece brings in like all the political, social, and like everything to do with everyone else. And like you see that not only in the culture but also even in the language. It's like you say one thing but it connects to everything else. So that just, I wanted to bring that up because I thought that was kind of neat when I started thinking about that.
Thank you.
Oh. I want to share two things now that the two of you are taking me to another universe. When the first time I worked in the US after I finished my PhD, I worked in a small town in Maryland in a small liberal art college. In Canada, we don't have that. The US has like different ways of how they constitute themselves, their higher learning educations, like tier 1, tier 2, like all of these categories, right? But I was in one of those. And in that small town, it was kind of like, it was a small town, and it was very similar to, say, Niagara-on-the-Lake, for those of you that are close to Toronto. And in this community, there were a lot of farmer workers because there was a lot of farms there. There was a lot of children in a school that was nearby, mainly children from Central America and Mexico. Long story short, I ended up going there because I was so hungry for realness. And during the day, you don't see anyone that looks like me remotely. It's super white, like as white as you can get. But in this particular school, like I was talking to a colleague of mine, and I said, she's like, "Oh, how you doing? Like, have you been to the Mexican place?" Sure. Have you been to the Mexican restaurant? Like, they speak Spanish there. Like,
yesterday was Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
And I'm cringing.
Yeah, I was like, I was so desperate, so depressed, so like, what the fuck did I do by moving here? Like, this is horrible. It was painful linguistically. And when I went to the school, most of the children that were there were the sons and daughters of these farmer workers. The teacher, the elementary teacher that they had in grade 5 was a white teacher. It's fine. She like super nice, whatever. So I told her that I was gonna be running a project with the students to familiarize themselves, because some of them said, "Oh, we want to become teachers," and I was like, "Okay, let's see what we can do out of this." So I go to the school and I start sitting in these classes for like an hour on a daily basis. And there was a little girl whose name was Amelia. And the teacher at the beginning, she kept on calling her Camila. And I thought at the beginning, oh, her name is Camila. And so then I started calling her Camila. Le digo, hola Camila, ¿cómo estás Camila? Bien, me dice, ¿y usted cómo está, señora? At that time, I figured I was already a señora. So that was like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting old. So she's like, oh, buenas tardes, señora, buenos días, señora. I think that 3 days after, she's like, venga, le voy a decir una cosa. I'm going to whisper something in your ear. And I was like, oh my God, a secret, cool. Like a gossip with like an 8-year-old. Woo, woo, my life is getting really good now. And she whispered in my ears, and she said, yo me llamo Amelia, no me llamo Camila. Like, my name is not Camila. My name is Amelia. Y yo le digo, ¿qué? Yo le digo, ¿cómo así? Le digo, pero tú me... and then I remember that I had not asked her directly for her name. I made the mistake of assuming what her name was, and instead of me corroborating with the child and her humanity and everything else to confirm what was her name, I relied on the teacher. Because you would figure a teacher would know her name, her students' names. So I was shocked, and I said to the teacher, and I said, I'm sorry, can I just talk to you for a second? She's like, yes. I'm like, did you know that her name is not Camila, but that it is Amelia? She's like, no, it isn't. Camila! And then the poor little girl, she's like, but then she saw me that I was, because I told her before I went to talk to the teacher, I said, Amelia, voy a hablar con esta profesora porque no puede ser. Like, this cannot be. Like I was livid. So I said, listen, that's when my tone of voice changed. I am the happiest person on earth. Super nice. But when I get the tone, there's no turning back. And I was like, excuse me, listen, her name is not Camila. Her name is Amelia. And I think that you owe her an apology, and that you owe her mom an apology. Because even in front of her mom, she was calling her Camila. And the mom, because the teacher did not speak Spanish, it was not because the mom didn't speak English. That teacher did not know Spanish. The mom, sin papeles, without any papers, had not wanted to disturb the teacher to correct her. That is how huge the political intent of exposure is. Can you imagine the ramifications for identity issues that people have when they're misnamed? And I share this because it's a question, it's a very serious question that we as educators, as parents, as caregivers, as social workers, as doctors, as nurses, as farmers, as housewives, as whatever our role in this society here, everyone, we're all in this political situation. And then when you think about, like, when you get overwhelmed about, like, oh my God, I want to be part of a revolution. Like, I want to go and fight. Like, I want to do this and I want to do this. And then people, a lot of the times, get overwhelmed because they don't know where to start. Sometimes it is in the simplest action of correcting language and to understand where that word is coming from, once again, culturally, politically, and historically. That changing our linguistic patterns, replicating them, adopting them into our life, and making sure that they are exposed in the work that we do, whether it's curriculum, whether it's like teaching lessons, whether it's I don't know, like whatever relationship you have in your community, that's where the change happens. In language, like our tongue has been so colonized to that point. Like we have all been so colonized that we need to start with language affirmations, like with making that work on ourselves in terms of how we understanding the violence implications that come with language. That's why, echoing what Linda Smith says, that the word research is one of the dirtiest one in the English language. And I agree 100%. And it could be the same in Spanish, because in Spanish, the equivalent could be investigación. What, are you bringing like a loop? Una lupa. How do you call a lupa in English? Loop? No. No, no se coye.
Magnifying glass.
Magnifying glass. I knew that. I forgot. Magnifying glass. In the name of research, we do helicopter visual understanding of a concept. This is why the politics of translation need to go, need to marry, need to make they need to make a sandwich with the politics of interpretation, because without interpreting a cultural context, we are reproducing linguistics patterns of power, and that is what Paulo Freire says, by the oppressor oppressing the oppressed. The person that is here oppresses this one, and then this person oppresses this one, and then this person oppresses this one, and it just goes on and on and on. And all of this is connected like the DNA molecules like that are so tied up through language. Language is the thing that is connecting power. That's why Western Hall talks a lot about discourses of power. And for those of you that are interested in discourses of power and how discourses of power I tie directly to linguistics and language, I think that you would find that particular work, if you're interested in this kind of topic, useful. So let me know and I will share that with you because it's extremely important. Stuart Hall, I'll send it in the follow-up, in the follow-up, because people a lot these days talk a lot about abolition work, as I mentioned on Tuesday, right? Or transformative justice, and like all of these big, amazing words that, like, I believe in that. I know it's going to happen because we're here working on that. But one of the foundations, if you will, one of those pillars is to undo how I have interpreted words. Like, I'm already too old to start learning like most of the two indigenous languages from El Salvador. I will not do that anymore. At my point, I can't. Like, I don't have the same memory retention capacity to do that. What I can do though, however, because that was like ripped apart from my cultural formation of that indigenous heritage that I still have, is I need to be operating politically active in reinterpreting again those concepts, because it is the concept that was introduced and that was forced upon me, like words like shame. That's why now, and my mother at the beginning didn't get it, but at one point, I think I was, I don't know, 22 or 23, I said to my mom, and this took a lot. I said to her, I am divorcing you culturally. This is not gonna work out. This is not working out between you and me. It's not you or me, it's the culture. So I need to divorce you culturally. because just even by saying it, of course, she chased me with the chancleta, like, you know, like I paid the consequences for that for 8 months, I think she didn't talk to me. But I already had a child at that time. And at that time, my child was already 7 years old or like 8 years old. Like I was a mom really young. And then consciously, I was like, okay, what am I going to do consciously? What can I do? If the colonial cycle, if I'm trying to break this colonial cycle, what can I do actively? Because I knew that the teachers were not going to do it. Like the teachers are not going to do it for her in elementary school because most of her, like all of her, like she always, ever since she was a little girl, all of the teachers that she's had, even in university, they have all been white. She never, can you imagine never having the ability to have in front of you someone that even remotely looks like you? Oh, like it's painful, like not to be able to even have that. Oh, yeah. So we are in charge. We are in charge of shifting. By me divorcing my mom culturally, I was able to intercept colonialism like a trap. I had to decide. I was like, okay, like I'm like a very visual, like if you came to my place, you would look like everything looks like a mousetrap. Like I'm always like planning and thinking and like trying to bring into 3D mode everything that's happening in my mild autistic brain. Like I had to like be putting it out there and be like, okay. And at some point I was like, okay, I have to create a strategy for real. Like what they talk about in the book, tactics and strategies. We need to strategize. We need to come up with tactics. So like how, for real, we are going to stop this as educators. And one of the ways is language. One of the ways is language. We need to grab language by the horn and say, no, I'm going to veer you the, you know, I don't know, I don't drive. I drive my bike. I drive a bike. Woo. But you steer the bike. You steer the bike. Like you tell the bike, you pedal the bike, you decide at what distance, you decide when you're going to stop, you decide where you're going to turn, you decide when you're going to put a brake. That's literally the metaphor that I could use to portray that idea. Because if I allow the bike to drive me, it's going to lead me into a crash. It's going to lead me directly into an accident. It's going to lead me to fall. And it's like, no, I'm grabbing you. This is where I'm going to be taking you. You don't drive me, I drive you. Like going through the conscious decisions. If you had the opportunity, for example, to write a letter to one person in your family who has helped consciously or not consciously, because the idea here is not necessarily to pinpoint someone in your circle, in your community, and say, you fucked me over with colonialism. It's your fault. Because this is about taking accountability. Like as a young mom, I knew that I had to be in charge of how my daughter was going to speak, how she was going to express herself. And one of the things that I had to intercept was, okay, I need to, we, you and me, this collective, we are going to create a new language and we're going to invent words. And we're like, if there is a word that doesn't exist, then we'll just invent it. Okay, it's 8:30. Oof, and I still had so much. Okay, I'm going to kind of like, oof. Questions, reactions. ideas, or see you on Tuesday, or I should play a song and everybody leaves?
It was an amazing session. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your passion and all the conversation that it was so emotional, and there was a great, I really had a great experience. Thank you very much for creating this environment.
We are all in this together, like Manal said. Like, thank you all for your present.
I have a final question.
Dale, Gloria. I was gonna say, is Thursday? No.
Okay.
Thursday. Never mind. Yes, Gloria.
Your relationship to the title doctora, because I have a PhD too, and I take it away when I am interacting among peers, like in this space, but I don't take it away in front of white people.
Repite, no entiendo.
Cuando el título de doctora.
Ya, el título.
Yo no me lo quito cuando estoy con gente blanca. But
no. Eso es otra. We need to talk about that in a whole different session. And like, there is so much to say about that. Yeah, there is so much to say about that. About like titles and like, because in like my grandfather, I don't write grandfather with a small g. He is my grandfather with a capital G, and he appears in my publications. That is how important he is. And I will, until the day that I die, will make sure that I center left and right to Black, Indigenous, and people of color, like until the day that I die. I don't have enough time in this lifetime to like undo everything that we have been forced to like process and learn. But language, so I don't know if that answers your question, Gloria, but we can talk more about that. And Sophie, you had your hand up. I just saw the blue thing.
Hi, sure. Thank you. I just have a question. Like, where are you going to post the record of this course, so that I can review it? Because for some personal reason, I missed part of the lecture.
Oh, the recording?
Yes.
Oh, the recording, I sent it in okay, so yesterday I had the yesterday from class of decolonization education. I sent an email to everyone that had registered for this course. There is 25 registered, 27 or 28 students from the university. And then there is about 150, 160 for this course outside of those 25, okay? Mm-hmm. And outside of the institution, no one has access to Quercus. In order for me to make it, to say like, fuck it, here are the readings, like here's this and like here is that, I have to send it through email. So I will not be posting anything in Quercus. Everything will be done through email. Like everything that you need will come from me directly through email.
Sure. Yeah, I received your email the other day, like Wednesday in the early morning. And that one, I don't see like a link to the record of the course. So
on Thursday, can somebody help me remind if we recorded this on Tuesday? Did we? Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, because that day I attend, but today I missed part of it. So I want to see.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll send it with the follow-up message tomorrow morning. I don't want to bombard you tonight with like another email. Like, no, I'll send it tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. What else? Nope.
I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
There's just so much information. It's like it's I really have not slept for the past 4 days because I'm just thinking all the time. But I was wondering if you can maybe next time or talk a little bit more about testimonialista and the pláticas in Chicana feminist terms that Dr. Hamza was using to base hers on.
Oh, did you read chapter 1 from her book?
Yeah. And she mentions them, but of course, because she's shooting off from them, she doesn't go into deeper explanation. I was just wondering.
Okay. Where is it? Oh, it's right here. Let me see. Yes, it's right here. Hallie, hold on. Okay. Da-da-da-dun-da-dun. I introduce you all to, I'll stop recording now. Oops.